So welcome to everybody. My name is Peter Hankey. I'm Program Director at A2EP. I'll be a co-host for you today, along with Mark Barber, who you can see on the screen there. And welcome to this third webinar in a series of 4 webinars on the topic of making your energy project business case. ROI Game Changers is the name of the game today. And we've got 3 fantastic speakers who Mark's going to introduce in just a moment. And so I'm really looking forward to the points that they've got to make, and then importantly, the Q&A that the audience comes through with later on today.
Thank you, Peter, and hello, everybody. As usual, we've lined up 3 great speakers for you today. You're in for a treat. The next speaker is Ross Milne, Asset Care Manager for Saputo Dairy Australia, Saputo being one of the largest players in the dairy sector in this country, with sites, many sites right across the country. Ross is an MBA qualified mechanical engineer and certified energy manager with over 35 years of experience across a range of sectors. He leads Saputo Dairy Australia's engineering sustainability program, driving energy performance improvements and emissions reductions. Ross oversees technology assessment and capital project delivery that supports energy teams to embed an energy efficiency and continuous improvement mindset across the business. Over to you, Ross.
All right. So what we're going to talk about today is an activity that or a project we looked at a couple of years ago, and just to show how you can build the project to actually make it economically viable. So we looked initially at a solar system for one of our sites, and we were looking to spend $8 million. It had a saving of 1.65 and a simple payback of 4.85 years. Now, in Saputo's terms, that's not satisfactory. We generally look for a return of less than 3 years, and when you're competing for a limited amount of capital, it's really hard to get that sort of thing across the line. Not only that, but it didn't actually do much for the decarbonisation of the site. So it would have given us the ability to offset about 25% of our energy, our electricity. Our energy is significantly more than that. But it wouldn't have significantly moved the dial. So then we started looking at, what if we put a large battery system alongside that? Of course, that significantly increases the capex, 15.2 million instead of 8. Savings were 1.55, so the actual savings are down a bit. The BESS could be charged for the excess solar capacity. Simple payback goes out to 8.7 years. So it doesn't actually do a whole lot for us, just to put a battery behind the meter as well. However, we then started looking at where that could make a difference to the site, and the site may not all be just in energy cost. So where we ended up, we have a supply instability issue. So the site we're talking about is north of Shepparton, so it's off the 220 kV grid. It's actually right at the end of a spur, and we regularly run into power flicks, and they can be short micro stops that can be significantly impactful on the site. So just to give a bit of an idea of what we find, the micro stops, we've had them in the double digits. So we've had up to 26 in a couple of weeks. Each shutdown can cause up to 8 hours of production loss as products get dumped, washed, and we have to remake, or it can just be a downgrade in the product because it was trying to make something at a particular temperature, or it was trying to do it in a particular part of the process, and that loses power for a short amount of time. Because it's a micro stop, very short interruption can actually cause elements of the process to lose where they're at and stop communicating with the PLC, and that could be quite impactful. So then we look at that. We look at what that actually costs us in terms of loss of revenue, and the estimate was about $2.5 million per annum at that particular site, and for those, because of the micro stops. So using the BESS to support the site for 2 hours allow us to actually ride through most of the micro stops, and then for slightly longer downtimes to actually allow us to stop under controlled conditions. has the ability to significantly move the amount of savings that the site can experience from that, from having the BESS behind the meter. So that takes us to about $4 million in return and about a 3.75-year payback. Still not quite where we need to be, but certainly a lot closer than we were when we were looking at 8.7 years with just having the BESS there and considering the energy savings. Now, the next part, and this is where we stopped. It's really not our core business, but it's certainly something that makes a bit of sense. For anybody that's tracking the wholesale price of electricity, you'll see that with solar, with the impact of solar, it's actually becoming a negative wholesale price through the middle of the day, which means that at some point during the day, you can top the battery up for free if you're exposed to the wholesale market. Now, we haven't done that. We have reasonable high voltage tariffs, but we don't expose ourselves to the wholesale market. So we're not eligible to do this, but it's certainly available. And by using 2 megawatts of the BESS, you can generate another $2 million, or estimated was it that you could generate another $2 million, which would take us to the point where we could save $5.7 million a year and give us a 2.67 simple payback. So now we're starting to talk about a project, same capital investment, but now we've got a project that's actually making some numbers. So there is a pathway to being able to make this work for the site and being able to make it work for the business. Now, just to have a look at that in terms of net present value for businesses that do that, we generally use 6% as our financing rate, and we're using 10 years as our consideration period. You'll see that the photovoltaics is not going to return the capital investment. Putting the battery with the photovoltaics together and blowing out the capital actually makes that never able to pay back. By avoiding the downtime and considering that, we're close to a break-even proposition. And then if we look at the arbitrage opportunity, it's possible to make a significant difference and have a reasonable return on investment that would get our finance people a little bit excited. Just one more thing that I would share, and that's we are exposing ourselves to needing to compete financially for capex. Saputo self-funds. We're not looking for international financing. We're not looking for financing on the banking market, but it needs to compete in terms of other production processes that can deliver a better return. However, we have been looking as a business and in the international part of the business, looking at things like carbon pricing, shadow pricing, as ways of moving the dial in terms of the environment. So we have our targets. Our targets give us, we have science-based targets. We're looking to achieve a 42% reduction in carbon by 2030. In order to do that, they looked at imposing a carbon price on the business. And then, although that was a little bit hard to do internationally, so we're represented in the US, Canada, Argentina, and the UK, as well as Australia. And we couldn't quite come to a carbon price that made sense. Shadow pricing was the other one. So the actually putting a cost of carbon into the consideration to simulate a carbon tax during the consideration of the ROI was another way that we looked at it. Where we actually netted out is we have sequestered a proportion of our enterprise capital. So 10% of Saputo's capital is actually sequestered, and it's actually allocated based on carbon outcomes rather than financial return. So we give ourselves the ability to put a certain amount of the capital to the purpose that we need without having to compete against production process improvements that would deliver better outcomes.
Thank you, Ross. Our third and final speaker is Matt Thomas. Matt is Principal of Origination and Trading at EnergyLink Services. Matthew is an experienced carbon commodities professional with a solid background in carbon credit origination, market analytics, and trading strategy. At Glencore Australia, he originated over 100 carbon project investments across a range of ERF methodologies and emerging technologies. Now at EnergyLink Services, Matt helps helps clients manage market risk and sourcing finance for their projects. Over to you, Matt.
Great. Thanks very much, Mark. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Matt Thomas, Principal of Origination and Trading at EnergyLink Services. I'm here to talk to you today about how using sales strategies can drive better return on investment when considering certificates. There have been a number of great presentations and a number of experts out there that can help explain what all the certificate markets are, the various schemes and how they work. But today I really want to shift that conversation to talk about why how you sell those certificates can be just as important as how many certificates you can generate in the first place and the engineering that goes behind the project. As we all appreciate, when it comes to getting the investment approval, risk, return, and bankability are key, and having a solid sales strategy can really materially impact those outcomes. So a very quick disclaimer. So we're going to be talking about markets today, and any advice that I give is very general in nature and is not to be considered financial advice. ACCUs and derivatives are regulated financial products. You need an AFSL to provide advice and potentially deal in those. EnergyLink has an AFSL and can provide advice to wholesale customers. If you'd like to talk more about that, please get in touch afterwards. So, why certificates matter for return on investment? Certificates can be another revenue source to generate when you're reducing your carbon emissions or improving energy efficiency. In this example, where the family-owned sawmill moved from a natural gas boiler to a biomass boiler, they were able to generate ACCUs that reduced the payback. Those ACCUs were generated or would be generated over 7 years and had an estimated value of $670,000 at the time. Now, if it was under different schemes, you can generate different revenues potentially, and the timeline from which you do that also changes. So ACCUs over 7 years. The VEEC scheme and the ESCI scheme under M&B approaches can still take over 24 months before you can realise the revenue. In that time, the markets can move significantly, and it's why it's very important to be considering your sales strategy when you're making your investment. Just to take a quick example of the VEEC market, some of you will be very aware of the volatility that's been happening in that market. But since April, where prices had been rising and very high for quite a period of time, they have decreased pretty significantly on the back of changes in regulation, on the back of the new announcements being made. And if you were underwriting your base case in April, you might say, oh, well, prices have been high for a while. Let's use 110. And then when it comes to delivering your project, we're now at, well, let's come back to 85, but that could significantly impact your project budget and mean that you're not meeting your targets or even at a loss. Sales strategies can help provide a bit of certainty for that price upfront when you're making that decision. Another example is slightly different, not as applicable to renewable heat, but is a really nice case, is the LGCs. Again, since last year have reduced significantly from 30 to about $6 now. That again has been driven by a number of market factors. But even at any point in time, I mean, I was looking at this recently, where between September and November, we had quite a consistent price of around $10. The forward price, which is the price you can agree on today for a future delivery, has been in backwardation. That means although the price was 10 for today, if you wanted to guarantee a price for the future, you're always going to get a lesser price. So you can't rely on the spot price in volatile markets because it might be moving around, and it's certainly not bankable for future sales. So what can we do about this? Well, there are a plethora of different options and ways to combine them. But a very basic toolkit for us to build from are the three tools here. So as I mentioned, the most straightforward of these is a forward sales contract. This is where you agree to deliver a certain volume of certificates at an agreed price and date in the future. Depending on the market liquidity, you can have very low transaction costs. However, if once it comes to that date, you either need to deliver the certificates, or if your product has been delayed, find other certificates to fill back into that. So lacking on flexibility, but does give you price certainty. If you want more flexibility, you can look at project offtakes, where you're agreeing with the buyers agreeing to take project risk. So they are agreeing to buy the units as they're delivered from the project in return for price certainty. Now, while this seems very nice, they are more expensive to negotiate. They can be quite complex contracts, and you have to give away more value because of the shared risk factor. The final simple option is buying a put option. This gives you the option to sell at an agreed point in time for an agreed volume at an agreed price. So you can agree to sell Beeks in 2 years at $75. However, you need to pay an upfront premium to do that, and that can be quite cost prohibitive. The benefit with the put options is that if the price is below 75, you're still going to get 75, and if it is above, you do not need to exercise the option, so you keep the upside. Now, what's right for you and how you build your sales strategy will depend on your project delivery risk. What's it like? What's the likelihood of the timeline changing? What's your risk appetite? How key are these certificates to the to the base case, or are they just an ice cream on top? And what's the overall market doing? And this needs to be considered for your business at any point in time. Sorry, Mark, you raised your hand. So just a quick example at the end is to show how once you have a sales strategy and potentially an offtake. Oh, yep. Oh, I think we've gone back. Sorry. There we go. You can use this to leverage to generate upfront financing for your project. So in the case of an ACCU project where you're registering under ISA method, you can either generate ACCUs over 7 years, that in this case would generate $3.3 million of revenue, or you could potentially use that to fund a prepayment, borrowing at essentially 15%, giving you $1.65 million upfront to help pay for capital. Now, this may reduce your NPV because it's more expensive than your weighted average cost of capital, but could potentially improve your IRR and reduce your payback. So these are the sorts of things that you would need to consider depending on the capital availability. Now, if you start combining prepayments on your carbon credits with traditional finance, then you can start to look in fully funded models and energy as a service and things like that. Just a quick recap on EnergyLink. So we really help from end-to-end project delivery, assessing the options from an engineering perspective of what can help drive decarbonisation in the most economic way at your site, understanding the various the certificate markets, how they interrelate, how they can be stacked, how they can combine with grants, then how you can use those to generate revenue and secure those with a sales strategy, and also help with your carbon reporting, including AASB, NGAs, greenhouse gas accounts, and net zero strategies.
Thanks very much, Matt, and to all of our speakers, each of our speakers. That's been a really interesting tour de force of different angles to take on how to boost the ROI on decarbonisation projects. We've had a number of questions starting to roll in through the Q&A, so please, if you have other questions, please do jump into that. I can see speakers have already answered a couple of the ones in there, but Perhaps if we could just get you to speak to that so that the audience in general can hear your explanation might be helpful. There's another question there about ACCUs as well. I'm not sure if it's directed to you or Matt, or perhaps both of you might like to have a swing at it. But the question is, how do ACCU prepayments work again? They're not deemed, right?
Yeah, I can probably take that one, Peter. So that's quite correct. ACCUs are issued after the emissions reductions have taken place, compared to the state schemes, where it's possible after a period of time to claim forward emissions reductions up front, being called deemed. Now, ACCU prepayments are a over-the-counter negotiated contract, and so it's hard to generalize, and each of them will be specific. However, in very simple terms, you are committing to deliver the ACCUs that you generate from your project in the future in return for an upfront payment.
Great. Thanks for that. There's a question here for you again, Matt, and also for Ross. It looks like it could be quite complex and require quite a lot of time to achieve outcomes. What's the cost to manage the transaction and ongoing account, and is this factored in?
I could probably just go quickly and then pass over to Ross. So at EnergyLink, we like to combine the sales strategy with the certificate generation and partner the two together, because that helps unlock the most value for our clients. It is not prohibitive to manage these transactions, and also I would say then, what is the cost of not managing it? Because the cost might be, well, I thought I was going to get 110 for a week, and now I'm getting 85. So it's not $20 a ton. I can promise that. But if anyone would like to discuss ACCU prepayments or sales strategies, then please get in contact with me.
Thanks. And Ross, do you have any further comment on that?
Yeah, so I guess that's a specific question about how do you make all of that work. So when we looked at the project, if we were just managing solar and the BESS, we looked at 1 FTE, and for the full setup with arbitrage, we considered it had to be a 3-shift operation, so at least 3 FTEs. We allowed $600,000 worth of annual cost to manage both the equipment and the process.
Great, thank you. And there was another question in here that I know, Ross, you've already answered online, but just for the benefit of the audience, did you do a payback analysis on BESS only with no PV? And you indicated you're still following that one up. You got any other?
Yeah, we're still thinking it through. So that it's there are a couple of issues with that, and it's about how much you can actually use the BESS. So we're on a site, the particular site that we were studying, that has a 10 megawatt cap, and we have 9.5 megawatts of connected load. So there isn't a great deal of grid capacity to be able to fill the BESS with using the grid capacity. However, we do share a feeder with part of the town, and there is a chance that the town is doing the saddle sort of curve. So 7 in the morning, 6 at night sort of stuff, where they have peak loading, and there may be some periods where you could fill the BESS, and that's what the modelling was indicating. You wouldn't get the most use out of it. I don't know that we'd be doing a whole lot of. You might be using for arbitrage, but I don't know that you'd get the other benefits if you're not topping it up with power you generate yourself.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. And the question I was going to ask you, Ross, bouncing off a comment, I guess, that's been made by Alan Pears in the chat window, just noting that the International Energy Agency has flagged once again. It's not new news, I know, but non-energy benefits of energy-related projects often do sway the business case and can actually outweigh the energy benefits in many cases, which is exactly what your case study is showing here. The energy benefits on their own were not looking very enticing for you, but you looked a bit broader and found other things that boosted the business case.
The infrastructure returns are I mean, they're probably in line with what people that are building power stations expect, but it's certainly not the way we like to deploy our capital. But there is certainly other savings to be had. There are other benefits. So
I guess I was just interested to draw on your experience. You've been doing energy projects for a long time. Just interested to hear your perspectives on, is this something that you've been able to, that you've seen a pattern in prior projects, or is this sort of a new approach for Saputo to think about it this way? Just interested in your thoughts.
No, it's that as a fundamental, I would say that our job is to run a business, and the business needs to be viable and needs to hit some targets, right? And some of those are return on investment. So every time I look at a site, every time I look at a potential project, and we do have a decarbonisation plan for each one of our sites. Some of them are going to require newer technologies that are still evolving. We need to make sure that we can actually get a return for the business, so that we're not just going to rip out a boiler and put in a heat pump unless we can make some money out of doing that. So there are some other benefits, and you can also stabilize your power, and you can you get reuse, and if we do heat pumps the right way, we might be able to shut down cooling towers. Those sort of things are all potential benefits to the business. They just need to be analysed properly so you can see where your savings can be found.
Yeah, so it's really about value stacking, isn't it? Adding up, looking broadly at the business case of whatever project you've got, and looking beyond just the utility cost savings that might arise from that, and building up a complete stack. Yeah, thanks.
Ross, I was wondering if you might be able to elaborate a bit more on the accounting methodology that's used in those cases where stopping the interruption to a process is going to stop the wastage of raw materials or prevent the conversion of that to valuable product. Do you account based on the purchase price of those raw materials, or the potential full sale value if it was converted to final product, for example?
In a lot of our cases, within that $2.5 million estimate we did for the site, we were working on the basis of the value realised versus the initial value that it should have been converted to. So it's all about conversion costs. So if you've just lost time, you've lost conversion opportunity. There is a conversion cost, so many dollars per tonne. If you have to do it again, then you've incurred the cost twice. And for some of it, for the things like the downgrade, it's about saying, okay, it was going to sell at this particular price, and now it's going to be at this other product. We've got to downgrade it. So extreme case, it's not for human consumption anymore, and it's going to go into some sort of animal market. Okay. That's got a cost. So all of those things were valued. It did actually take quite a lot of effort and a long time to be able to get a rigorous number around that. But that does get budgeted for. So our site budgets for downgrades and losses, and that what we'd be accessing there is the reduction in that budget.
And if there's any wastage involved in those cases, like what I mean by that is product going to drain, additional load on the wastewater.
Yeah, that's also budgeted for. So once again, we talked about, we would be saving that budgeted cost. Yeah.
So one of the value add benefits of energy projects we talked about in a previous A2EP webinar, of course, was lagging and insulation of hot surfaces such as steam valves. And one of the co-benefits there is a safety benefit. And I know, Ross, you installed some of those a lot of those across the company. Is that example of a co-benefit just simply stated as such, or is there an attempt to put a value on that benefit if it's a safety factor?
No, we haven't been valuing safety. That's a given. It's a right to exist issue. But yeah, we did. We certainly did. We got. I'd encourage anybody that's on the webinar to consider because we've done our validation, our measurement verification process. Those covers, the flexible covers over things like large steam valves and other devices, ends of boiler drums, and everything else that's normally exposed to the environment, has more than paid back. It paid back in less than a year.
And of course, another example, of course, is compressed air systems. Again, in an industrial setting, the compressed air is maintained efficiently, then it's only going to help support a reliable production process.
We were analysing on one of our other sites, compressor upgrades, compressor replacements. We were able to drop an entire compressor out by doing the repairs. We bought one of those fluke meters that gives you a visual indication of compressed air leaks. And by using that a couple of times a year, we're able to do with one less compressor. And I'm talking large compressors, not small ones.
So substantial reduction in maintenance costs, cost of ownership.
Yeah. It's certainly not something you want to neglect. It's I've found as much as 40% of compressed air is just going to leaks.
Yeah. There's another question here that I think might be appropriate to throw to each of the speakers. The question is from Joel. The financials and economics can be easier to move through decision gates on a quantitative basis, but I'm wondering what are the other educational challenges or wins the panel have had when educating or working with sponsors through these types of projects? So I guess away from the quantitative aspects, it's winning the hearts and minds. I guess is that the thrust of that question? Anybody want to take a swing at that?
I'm happy to start first, and then we can maybe pass to Meredith, and then to Ross. So, yeah, I mean, good question, Joel. I think that from my side, the discussion can be around, well, how certain are the quantitative factors? You know, if you have varying power prices, if you have varying carbon intensities, if you have varying certificate markets, how can you secure those then to make everyone comfortable with the risk of the project? So I think that's been key, and then sales strategies fit nicely into that.
We've got a comment here, not so much a question, it's more of a comment from Chris Laurie, making the very valid point that one of the co-benefits in some projects is water savings. So a good example would be, well, Chris has mentioned shutting down cooling towers, and also, of course, if it's a hot water project, a hot water usage reduction project that's saving energy, but also actually saving water being consumed, and of course, water being having to be treated that goes down the drain. So there's a real value there in that. I'm not sure, Ross, if you'd like to add to that concept around the water and energy nexus, which is interesting.
Yeah, there was an interesting case at one of our sites where we were using condensate. All the condensate that should have gone back to the boiler was actually being used for another process, and it was being used because it's distilled, right? It's a very clean source of water once you get it. But replacing that with an RO skid saved a significant amount of water, let it condensate go back to the boiler, and save quite a lot of energy as well. So there were multiple benefits from actually approaching the purifying of water in a slightly different way. So yeah, there's been a few examples where water savings have been quite significant by approaching it differently.
Great. Early next year, we have some more webinars lined up, and one of those will be that we're planning is on the topic of energy as a service. And we've got a comment here from an anonymous attendee that asking Ross if off-balance sheet solutions have ever been considered.
Yeah, so Saputo's got a history with energy as a service. Our thermal process was fed on two of our large sites by build and operate boilers. That we've actually moved away from that, so we're not working on that basis at the moment. And as an example, we're currently commissioning biogas-driven microturbines to generate electricity on the site. But we will own and we will operate those turbines. We won't be expecting somebody to do it as a service. We've seen proposals for that at different times, but it doesn't fit with our corporate culture.
Can you give it a little bit more insight into why that is, Ross? What is it about the as a service model that you don't like or that doesn't fit?
There's a certain amount of flexibility that's not there. reinvestment opportunity. So the boilers, they went over 20 odd years. We found the cost of operation was significant. We hadn't invested in upgrading the technologies. So as a final transition away from energy as a service, we upgraded the efficiency of the boilers, started using O2 trim instead of using the excess air that boilers normally run with. Turned them essentially into condensing boilers because we got so much energy out of the system that and it was a saving of about $2 million a year to actually own it and invest in it yourself too. So I think energy as a service, you tend to lose a little bit of control. You lose a little bit of internal knowledge as well. And it's not necessarily the best way to get an outcome for your business.
Interesting. Thanks for that. And I'm conscious of time, so we might look to wrap this fairly soon. But I think that's been a really interesting walk through the ROI game changer field. We've sort of heard from Meredith looking at combining public-private funding mechanisms to get what is essentially a project without any business case over the line, just based on greenhouse reduction benefits and bringing together the parties with interest in that, through to a very commercial outcome from Ross, but needing to take a broader look at value stacking and looking beyond those purely utility-based savings where it just wasn't going to work. And then Matt, of course, has given us a bit of a deep dive into the wonderful world of certificate creation and trading and the need for a sensible sales strategy to go with that. It's not just about the certificates, it's about the strategy that sits around it. So I'd just like to thank each of our three speakers once again. That's been really insightful and useful. And I just want to close with a couple of other thoughts of upcoming events. So as I mentioned at the beginning, this is the third of a four-part series. So we've got the fourth one coming up next week on securing finance, as I mentioned at the beginning. So please get registered for that one if you haven't already. I'd like to flag that in a couple of weeks' time, we have our decarbonising commercial buildings launch. So that's a triple header program. Lots of details online. If you scan the QR code there, you'll get the details on that one. But please jump in and register for that one. We'll be looking at the wonderful world of decarbonising commercial buildings. And then just flagging that next year on the 19th of Feb, we've got a member update meeting and networking drinks in Melbourne. So if you're based in Melbourne or planning to be there around that time, please jump into that and join us for that one as well. And finally, if you'd like to get any further information on A2EP's activities, please look us up on LinkedIn. Just search for A2EP and hit the follow button, and you'll get the alerts that come out on a reasonably regular basis from all of us. And any questions, of course, you can send through to our email address there as well. So with that, I'd like to leave it and just thank everybody for joining us. Thank our presenters once again, and look forward to speaking to you again next week. Bye for now.